Drive Home Reviews podcast, where I review the movies I have just seen as I am driving home from the theater. So I decided to do this one. Little backstory. I was approaching the end of the week and wasn't sure what I was going to review. Nothing really came out this week that I was interested in going and seeing. There was really nothing in the rentals I have available to me at the house that I was like, okay, let's check that out. So I was just debating on releasing one of the ones I've got in the bank and kind of taking this week off from seeing a new movie. But a co-worker of mine at my new job, who's become not only a good friend, but has been a mentor and has really helped guide me through my first year in this new position, and has also become a patron of the show who listens to us and enjoys what I do, and I am deeply appreciative for everything he's done and his being a fan of the show. But he suggested this movie to me. He asked me, are you going to do weapons? And I finally kind of thought, why not? What the hell? So I thank my co-worker and good friend Eric for suggesting this movie. And to him, if he's listening, I just want to say, I hope we're still friends after you hear this review. Because I'm sorry, buddy, and I'm sorry to everyone else out there. I did not care for this, and I did not care for it to a bafflingly shocking degree. Like, there are movies I see that I don't care for and just kind of go, okay, that just didn't work for me, all right, whatever. And then there are ones that you see that you're just like, what? Why? Like, and that's what this one is. This is a why kind of movie, because I said that a lot watching this. So let's discuss this film. So odds are you are probably aware of it, because one of the things this movie had going for it is it had a great hook. And the advertising did a wonderful job of highlighting that and really sparking people's interest. So the idea, in case you don't know, is that in this little town, one night at exactly, I think it's 2:17, I think it was, or 2:13 or 2:17, I can't remember now. In the morning, a group of children, all in one class at school, got out of their beds, left their houses, and disappeared into the night. Nobody took them, nobody forced them, they all just got up and disappeared. And that is a fantastic hook for a film, especially a horror movie. And of course, you're going to go see it and go, okay, so the big question is, what happened to these kids? Here's the problem with having a really good hook. And that is, it is very, very, very difficult to pay off that great hook in a way that is satisfactory to everyone. Because what happens when you have one of these mystery box movies, which has been made famous by J.J. Abrams, is that when you start out with a really enticing mystery, and an audience gets really invested and really interested in what the answer is, and you don't have something pre-planned and ready to go, or what you have maybe isn't as exciting or interesting as you had hoped, it's going to be disappointing to most people. And I think that's one of the big problems of this movie. I meant to say this beforehand, but I'll jump in now. So, as with Life of Chuck last week, this is a movie that is almost impossible to give a full analysis of without talking about the ending or some of the reveals and things like that. So, yes, I am throwing up the spoiler warning.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Maybe say spoiler before you give away the end of a movie, okay?
So, if you do want to see this, if you haven't seen it and you're interested in seeing it, go watch it, because I don't want to ruin that for you. And then if you're not as enthralled with it as I was, then yes, come back and hear my reasons why. But you've been warned, I am talking spoilers from here on out. So anyway, as discussed, it's very difficult to give a payout to a really, really, really entrancing hook. Some things can pull it off, others can't. I cite the first couple seasons of Lost, where the mystery of what was going on was very enticing. Everybody was interested. And then as we got information and as we got answers, it just got more and more confusing and disappointing. And that was kind of... All right, let's back up. Let's back up a little bit. I'm trying to think of the best way to come at this. So let's start out with something I think the movie actually did do very well. I like the method in which the story is told. So the story is told not so much in acts, but in chapters. If anybody has read the Game of Thrones books, you know that the chapters are each from the point of view of a different character. And some characters don't get point of view chapters. For instance, famously in the very first book, Robert Baratheon never got a chapter from his perspective. Everything else was in how people responded to him. Okay? So this movie is divided up into individual chapters, and in each chapter we see the events of the film from a different person's perspective. And we see how things have affected them. We see the dramas of their lives. We see the intersecting of, various plot points here and there. And what's interesting about this, and one of the reasons I think that this mode of storytelling worked, is that from the character's perspective, no character has all of the information. We kind of go in an order of who has the least amount of information to who has the most amount of information. And even the person with the most information doesn't have all of the information. So, in a way, I like that. I like when there is, if you're going to have a big hook like this, I almost prefer it where there isn't a real explanation, or not everything is explained to us. I badmouth J.J. Abrams with Lost. Let me praise him a little bit with Cloverfield, even though he didn't direct that one, but it did come from him. I like how in the movie Cloverfield, I'm not talking about the online games or the LARPs or whatever, I'm talking about in the movie, we are given no information about where the monster came from, what it is, what it wants. We have no information. Same thing with the original Tremors. We are never told what the graboids actually are, where they came from, how long they've been there. You get more information in the subsequent sequels, but in that first movie, it didn't matter. They had their speculations, and but it didn't matter. Here is the trauma that we have to deal with. So where they came from and all that doesn't really matter. So I like it in a movie like this with that kind of hook where we don't know everything. And in truth, we actually don't know everything. We're given some very heavy-handed tips. But throughout the mystery, and as the movie kind of progresses, we're given a little bit more information, a little bit more information, a little bit more information, but no one character actually has all of the information. And I kind of like that. That's scary, because there are a few things scarier than not knowing. If you ever had this experience where your boss sends you an email on a Friday and says, we need to schedule a meeting for Monday, and you're like, okay, what's it about? You're like, well, we'll talk about it on Monday, and you spend the whole weekend going, shit, what could it be? What could it be? What could it be? And it turns out they just want to talk about what the schedule for next year is. It's like, but that not knowing is what terrifies you. So in that, yeah, I think that the movie did that. That was a good way to tell the story. I liked that. Unfortunately, as we get more information, so again, here's where the spoiler comes in. So I'm going to just spoil it so we can talk about it. So it turns out, there was one kid in the class who didn't disappear. Alex, I believe the character's name is. And it turns out that Alex's ailing aunt came to stay with him and his family, and his aunt is a witch. I am assuming that this is a prequel or another sequel to the Blair Witch Project. And she, puts his parents under a spell, and she makes him do things to take care of them. She forces him not to tell anybody. The big question I have is why she didn't put him under a spell. I'm very curious as to, because that would have just solved all of her problems. It was way more suspicious that this one kid didn't disappear, and so therefore became the subject of questions. I guess because she needed him to go out and buy soup and stuff to feed all of the people she had under trances, I guess, but she could have just fucking done that. Nobody would have batted an eye. So I don't know if it's because there was something about him that she couldn't possess or what, but she made him basically do all the stuff, and she's the one who cast a spell on all of his classmates that made them kind of mindless slaves to come to her. Again, they never give a full explanation as to why, which I'm fine with. But they heavily imply through some background. You hear it on the TV, and the teacher is talking about it in class, about things that have parasitic life cycles. So from that, we can ascertain that they established that she was sick, and that we can ascertain that she took the kids basically to drain their life force and to heal her whatever was killing her. Okay. So I guess that's one way you could have gone with this. Now this could be a personal thing, that I find that a letdown. I did not find that anywhere near as interesting an answer or as satisfying a conclusion to this very spooky mystery as I was hoping. So maybe it's a personal thing. Maybe other folks will actually see it and go, oh my God, that's the most terrifying thing ever. But yeah, that did not work for me. here's the part that I have a real problem with this movie. I don't know. Did they intend for this movie to be hilarious? Because so many things in it are, I'm going to say, unintentionally hilarious, to the point that any and all tension is drained from it. Because the staging, the costume choices, whatever, all just make it look fucking ridiculous. Now, comedy and horror are much closer associated than people give them credit for. Right now, I'm reading a book about the making of Scream movies, one of my favorite horror franchises. And as they're talking about the original screenplay, everybody's quote kind of sounds the same way. This is so crazy because it's scary, but it's funny, and that just blows my mind. And yeah, Scream was one of the big ones in the 90s to kind of incorporate both comedy and horror, but they're hardly the first. Like, as you know, Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense, always said that all of his films, he staged them as if they were comedies. Now, granted, he had a dark sense of humor, but, you know, watch any of his films and there's goofiness in them. Because he understood, and most people understand, that comedy and terror are very closely related. You yell boo at someone and they go, ah, and then the next thing they usually do is go, ah. They laugh. Because laughter is a natural way that the psyche tries to calm itself. So having comedy elements in a horror movie is nothing new. But the extent to which this film undermines itself by going just absolutely Looney Tunes, I'm sorry, but the vision of Benedict Wong running down the street like Tina Belcher with his eyes bugging out like he's one of the killers from space did not fill me with horror. It made me laugh. Likewise, before we are actually introduced to Granny Goodness there, we kind of get shots of her, and she's, you know, in this big purple tracksuit, a hideous orange wig, lipstick applied, like over the lips, like not on the lips, like over them, you know, looking like the fucking Joker's grandmother. And here's the thing, with all of these, I understand why they did it. I understand what choices they were going for, but they fell short. I get that, again, the character who has the most information is Alex, the little kid. So he has to be the most afraid of the aunt character, so it makes sense that they kind of did her up in this over-exaggerated outfit because, you know, older people can be very scary to little kids, especially if they're sick. You know, that's a lot for a young mind to try to wrap its head around. So I get that they're trying to tap into that very primal kind of fear of something older and not healthy that a lot of little kids have an experience of. But to make her look like the crazy aunt from an 80s sitcom, like, it undercuts it, folks. It really fucking undercuts it. There's another scene towards the climax where Josh Brolin, who plays one of the fathers of one of the missing kids, is fighting with one of the zombified people that Aunt Granny Goodness has captured. It's like a discount Jay from Jay and Silent Bob, right? And the goal is, and they did it kind of with Benedict Wong, is that these zombies are going to keep coming. Like, you can't knock them out. You can't put them down. You can't, they're not like, putties from an episode of Power Rangers. You hit them and they go flying and that's all. So there's this sequence where he keeps beating this kid up and the kid keeps jumping up and coming back after him. And I get what they're going for, but the staging of it and the increasingly intense ways he's trying to dispatch this kid make it look less scary and intimidating and more like that scene from Cannibal the Musical where the killer keeps coming back to life and they play it as a joke. Likewise, okay, the climax of the film, so this should have been like the biggest part. This should have been like the big cathartic moment of the entire film. When Alex finally turns the tables on Granny Goodwitch and sicks all of his hypnotized classmates on her, there's this extended scene of her running away and the kids chasing her down, smashing through walls, breaking through windows, just relentlessly chasing this woman down like they're the apes escaping to the redwoods. And this is supposed to be like the most cathartic moment in the entire film, right? This evil person who has used and manipulated the innocent for her own ends is getting her comeuppance. And the sight of this old woman in her bathrobe, in her pink pajamas, running through the street going, hey, help me, oh goodness, that doesn't make me go, yeah, get that bitch. It makes me go, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, so I know why they did all of these moments. Like that moment, for instance, I understand it's supposed to show this person who's been all powerful and manipulating all of these people and events is now exactly what she was when she came. She's a frail, helpless old woman. So I get what they were going for, but it came out hilarious and not scary. It came out ridiculous. And this leads me to one of the things that really did piss me off about this movie, okay? So, so the beginning of the movie is all narration, right? It's this creepy little girl who's never identified. We don't know who she is. Apparently just one of the other kids in town who I don't know why they're telling us this. But this creepy little girl voice narrating the opening of the film, which was completely unnecessary. To prove this, I actually did go back and watch the beginning of this movie again, but I put it on mute and just watched the silent scenes and tried to figure out if, as best I could, because I had pre-knowledge, to see, does it fit together? Can you connect, the story of what's happening without the creepy little girl narration? And yes, you could. So the narration doesn't add anything. It actually takes away from it. But then, at the end of the movie, the little girl comes back. Her voiceover comes back to give us the wrap-up. And she exposed herself as a fucking liar. One of the first things she says in this movie is that, and the kids ran into the darkness and no one ever saw them again. But then at the end of the movie, she's like, all the kids were returned to their parents and some of them have started to talk again this year. But you said at the beginning no one ever saw them again. You're a fucking liar, spooky little girl voice. You are a dirty, dirty liar.
You're a liar. You're a liar! Slimy scumbag liar!
You explicitly told us at the beginning of the show you weren't the murderer.
That's right. It's a twist.
No, it's a lie. A lie is not a twist.
Don't just tell me something at the beginning to try to make something more scary and then go back on it at the end like, ha, I was only kidding. No, you are a liar. You are a bad, unreliable narrator. Terrible little lying little girl. Okay, however, I digress. Now, before I really segue into another rant, let me state, there are some things about this movie that I did like. I liked, as I said, the way the film is structured. I also like so there are one or two scary moments in this. One of the things, the camera tricks that they do that is very, very unnerving in a good way is they'll do a long tracking shot with the main character in the scene walking straight towards the camera, and we see something out of focus following them. The character will turn like around a corner, like going into a grocery store, and they'll turn a corner and the figure behind them will disappear out of the shot. But then, just as they're about to turn another corner, the out-of-focus character reappears, still following them. And that was really well done. They did that a couple times in this. And that was really, really well done and clever. I liked that a lot. That feeling of that, wait, was there someone behind me? No, okay, no one's there. And then it's like, oh shit, no. Or you think you've lost them and then they're still there. So I really liked that. I thought that was a good camera trick, and they did it a couple times, and it was effective. I also want to give shout out to Julia Garner, who I think gave the best performance in this film. This is her third appearance on Drive Home Reviews this year. She was in our season opener, The Wolfman, and then, of course, Fantastic Four: First Steps, and now this. And that's 3 movies spread across this year, 3 very different roles, and 3 vastly different performances. And I think she did a good job in all of them. So I remember not being as impressed with her in The Wolfman, but I've changed my tune a little bit since then. So yeah, I give her a lot of credit. She's really showing off her range as an actor. So I think she did a really good job. So big points to her. So here's the thing that really pisses me off, all right? And this is kind of a side thing. So this is me kind of getting off on a rant.
Now, I don't want to get off on a rant here, but I'm rambling. Anybody want any coffee?
But one of the things that I live by in terms of this show is I try not to criticize something if I can't think of a better way to do it, right? One of those things is like, well, that didn't work. Okay, what would you have done instead? Okay, well then shut up. But there are some movies that I watch and they piss me off because I can come up with a better plot to the movie as I'm watching the movie. And, I remember the first time that ever really happened for me was watching The Phantom Menace back in the day. And as I'm watching this movie, a much better film came to mind, and I got this idea based solely on the first chapter. So the first chapter of this is from Julia Garner's perspective. She plays the teacher of all the students who either disappeared or Alex, who's, still there, right? And because this is a tense moment, all these kids have gone missing. There's no clues, there's no information, people are upset, parents are unnerved, all of this is very, very frightening. So, of course, you start looking for a scapegoat. You start looking for someone to blame, and people started looking at her. She knows something. She did something. You know, Josh Brolin, as one of the fathers, does this, and he goes to the police and he's like, "You've got to talk to her." And they're like, "We did. We looked into her background. Nobody took those kids. You know, nobody, you know." So her story there at the beginning is her basically just being persecuted and thought of as a monster, even though it turns out it's just one person really doing it, but starting to feel more and more isolated, starting to feel desperate. And as I'm watching this, what this made me think of was a classic episode of The Twilight Zone called The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. So, a side digression from the side digression, I'm going to put up the spoiler warning yet again, because if you haven't seen this, 40, 50-year-old television show, go fucking watch it, because it's awesome. But, just in case, you should see it on your own merit. So, let me put up the spoiler warning again.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Maybe say spoiler before you give away the end of a movie, okay?
So in this classic episode, we visit the town, a little town on Maple Street, kind of every town USA. And all of a sudden, there's a light in the sky, and all of the power goes out. And what happens is people get more and more paranoid, people get more and more suspicious. One person's house still has power, and they're like, well, why does your house have power? And it just builds and builds and builds until these quaint people watering their lawns and waving to each other, living a idyllic Leave It to Beaver lifestyle, are fucking turning on each other. And it turns out that the big twist at the end is that the power loss was, in fact, Martians running a test to see if, the best way to conquer Earth, and they come to the conclusion that they don't have to do anything. They just cut the power and wait for everybody to kind of lose their shit. And basically, we do their job for them.
Oh, what a twist. Shh.
And that's what I felt watching this first chapter of this movie, is that would have been a really fucking good movie. To have this great hook, this very scary hook of all these kids disappearing without a trace, leaving of their own accord, with no warning, no clues, and just have this quaint little town slowly start to rip itself apart. Because, in our suspicious, xenophobic, homophobic, every other type of phobic, American nature, that is what happens. We look for a scapegoat. That is our nature, and it's even worse now. And I would have ended a movie like that exactly like The Twilight Zone did, and just have a couple people. I wouldn't say if they were Martians, I wouldn't say if they were ghosts, if they were the devil, if they were, enemy agents from a foreign power. I wouldn't say anything. I just have a couple people in very plain clothes kind of watching it all and kind of saying, okay, look at that. All we got to do is do this and watch what happens. And then have them turn and walk off, and then we see the shadows of the children kind of following them off into the darkness. And that's how I would have ended the movie. And I think that would have been a way more poignant, way scarier film than what we got. And I know it's unfair to judge a movie not based on the movie I got, but on the movie I wish I had. That's not fair to the film. But at the same time, if I can come up with a better concept for your hook than what you ended up with, I think that's kind of a problem, right? And what's funny, but what's even funnier is if you listen to the original Rod Serling outro at the end of that episode, it fucking fits with it. It fucking would fit with the title of this movie.
The tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons that are simply thoughts, attitudes, prejudices, to be found only in the minds of men. For the record, prejudices can kill, and suspicion can destroy. And a thoughtless, frightened search for a scapegoat has a fallout all of its own. For the children, and the children yet unborn. And the pity of it is that these things cannot be confined to the Twilight Zone.
Like, it fucking works! So, yeah, again, that's more of a rant, and again, not fair to judge the movie based on that, but, you know, if I'm so bored and so uninterested in what is happening in this film that I concoct I start yearning for a better version of it, and I concoct a perfect blend of the two ideas while I'm watching it. That kind of says it all, doesn't it? Okay, so I think I've land blasted this movie enough. Anything else I can talk about is just kind of piling on. You know, I could talk about how they go with a lot of the horror cliches and none of them work. You go with the fact that while I liked Julia Garner's performance, her character was a fucking idiot. You know, but let's not beat a dead horse here. Let's put it down. So final grade for weapons. I gotta go a D. And the only thing keeping it out of the F range is that I do think there were some good elements to it. I do think there were some good ideas, and I do think that there was some good filmmaking going on in this, and a really good performance from Julia Garner. But as a whole, it is not scary. It's unintentionally hilarious, and it makes me yearn for a better version of what it could have been. So there you have it. Okay, so that's my rant. That's my rant on weapons. So Eric, I hope you listened all the way to the end, and I'm sorry. I hope we're still friends. Okay. Alrighty, so there you have it, folks. So thanks for coming along. Thanks for listening. On that, real quick, I've noticed something over the past couple weeks, and I've noticed that the listens on these podcasts have gone up. Like, a lot of them have gone up in numbers. Yeah, I'm not anywhere near a household name, but into the teens, 11 listens for me. That's fucking amazing. So, I saw those numbers, and it just put a big smile on my face, because somebody is listening, and I'm hoping enjoying what I'm doing. So that really means the world to me. So thank you to everybody who's listening, and who does enjoy what I do. I know that my voice is somewhat grating. I know I ramble. I know I'm not perfect, but it means a lot that people out there enjoy it. So thank you so much. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.